Good afternoon, all. Welcome to this 8th bi-weekly academic interactive session for the students. The topic for today's session is Insurance Law and Practice. Today we have with us Mr. Venugopal Rajamanori, our guest faculty, Dr. Akinchan Buddhadev Sena, Deputy Director ICSI, and myself C.S. Sarika Verma, Assistant Director ICSI, to answer the queries received from the students. First of all, I want to introduce our guest faculty, Mr. Venugopal. He is a postgraduate in business management and holds various other certifications in the fields of banking, insurance, capital market, and wealth management. Mr. Venugopal is a fellow member of III Life and AIII Non-Life. Mr. Venugopal is a promoter director of Ascent Academy for BFSI sector, which studies in conducting NISM and NSC modules, IIBF and III modules, and other customized training program in BFSI domain includes online training program on mutual funds, stock market operations, equity derivative, investment planning, and asset management since June 2016. Mr. Venugopal is also a professional director in Atlas Insurance Brokers Private Limited, Hyderabad since June 2015. Mr. Venugopal is visiting faculty in Narsi Morji, IMS and Aura Business School. Mr. Venugopal is also associated as empaneled Associate Corporate Trainer at SEBI, NISM, NSC Hyderabad, ICICI Prudential Asset Management Company, and American Academy of Financial Management. Welcome once again to Mr. Venugopal, sir, at this platform. Sir, now I want to say the floor is open for the interactive session with the guest faculty.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sarika. Good afternoon, Akinchan. Good afternoon, friends. First of all, please confirm if I am audible clearly. Am I audible? Right. Very good. So I will start off with a brief introduction of the profile of the life insurance industry. First of all, insurance is something which is a financial service. It's an activity which tries to protect the economic value or financial value of an asset against certain risks which are uncertain in nature. That's what is insurance activity is all about. And insurance broadly is put under life, non-life is also known as general insurance, health insurance, which is standalone, and reinsurance, 4 broad categories, right? I'll be focusing mainly on the life insurance, but before that, briefly, I'll tell you what is the profile of this insurance industry. I will share the PPT with you. Just a minute. It's share content, screen 1. Okay, this one. Right. Please confirm if this PPT is visible. Sarika ma'am, just please confirm it is good. Okay, thank you. Right. So the governing act for insurance activities in India is the Insurance Act 1938, which is applicable to all insurance activities in India, life, general, health, reinsurance, and all the intermediaries involved, support services involved in insurance. For all of them, this act is applicable. This is a governing act, right? And it talks about the registrations, the duties, the functions, the controls, and all these things, and their operations. The regulatory body for insurance is IRDAI, Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, formed in 1999 under a special act called IRDA Act, right? Post the economic sector reforms, the financial sector reforms, insurance reforms also started under the recommendations of Malhotra Committee, and subsequently IRDA was formed, and insurance sector was made open to the private people also, private institutions also after that, right? Till that time, it was only the public sector insurance companies which are operating, LIC for life insurance and GIC and its subsidiaries in general insurance. That's how it was prior to the formation of IRDA. To bring in more competition, more technology related benefits, more insurance penetration, this IRDA has been formed and private sector people are allowed to operate in India. Now, the role of IRDA is basically, while promoting the industry growth in an orderly manner, the insurance industry growth in an orderly manner, also tries to protect the interest of the policyholders, So these are the two key functions. One side, promoting, developing the insurance activity. Second is protecting the interest of the policyholders, right? And the connected activities. The IRDA has mainly the chairperson, which is heading it, and there are 5 full-time directors, and then part-time members are also there. The current chairman is Mr. Subhash Chandra Kuntia, who is from IAS background. The first chairman was Rangachari, Mr. Rangachari, who happens to be a chartered cum cost accountant. And Subhash Chandra Kuntia is the present incumbent chairman, who is from IAS background. And you have councils, insurance councils and insurance association, which are participating in the policy making in insurance activity in India, right? So they interact between the government and the IRDAI and the stakeholders and participate in the policy making in insurance sector. That's the role of councils, insurance councils. We have life insurance council, we have general insurance council too, and you have an insurance association. These three are the people who are participating in the policy making, right? Life insurance started off way back in 1818 in India. Britishers, first of all, started this with the name Oriental Life Insurance, but they were mainly giving insurance cover to only the Europeans, their people, not to the Indians. Even when Indians were given insurance cover, their life under insurance language was treated as substandard life, means high risk life. And they were given insurance cover at a very high cost. So then Indians, they started their own insurance company, Bombay Life Insurance, Life Assurance, somewhere in the later part of the century. They started off this Bombay Life Assurance, and they started giving insurance cover to Indians. That's how it all started off. Later on, you have all these acts which were enacted, and Insurance Act was passed in 1938. And post independence, the then existing all insurance companies, they were all consolidated and formed one. They were nationalized, and the LIC was formed under a special act, Life Insurance Corporation. And till IRDA was formed and private sector people started operating in India, LIC was enjoying monopoly. There was no competition at all, which is also not good. Monopoly is also not good. So with the advent of the private sector from 1990, 2000 onwards, HDFC Life and ICICI were the first to start. Today we have something like 24 life insurance companies and something like 34 general insurance companies, which includes 7 standalone health insurance companies, right? Together they have formed the insurance activity in India. And the share of the private sector life insurance is something like 30s. Even now, LIC holds the majority of the market share, something like 70%. I'm telling approximate figure. Private sector has something like 30%. Before this starting of the private sector, we had insurance penetration in India to the tune of something like just around 2%, just over 2%. Now we have something like 3.76. How the penetration is calculated? It is the premiums to the GDP. Premium collected to the GDP of the nation. That's how it is measured. Insurance penetration, right? We can see this is general insurance background. General insurance activity got nationalized in 1972, and GIC was formed. And it's subsequently GIC started doing only reinsurance business in India. And the 4 subsidiaries, National, United, New India, Oriental, they were doing the general insurance activity. We can see the Malhotra Committee recommendations, after which the reform started in India. And we have 58 insurance companies, which includes 24 in life, 34 in non-life, which includes 7 standalone health. General insurance companies are allowed to give health insurance cover also, but standalone health insurance, only health insurance, nothing else. General insurance, they give marine, fire, motor insurance, everything, along with health insurance. Whereas standalone health insurance companies give only health insurance cover, right? Then you have reinsurance company. We have only one in public sector, that is GIC. There was one private sector reinsurance company which was given license called ITI, but subsequently the license was cancelled because it could not start the activity within the stipulated time. But we have something like 9 foreign insurance companies which are doing reinsurance in India. Swiss Re, Munich Re, Hathway, Lloyds, they're all Hanover Re, they're all doing reinsurance activities in India as their branch offices, right? That's how we have a competition to GIC. Otherwise, GIC enjoys a monopoly in terms of reinsurance business. And we have a lot of other stakeholders like the distributors. The insurance products are distributed, made available to the ultimate policy holders through a distributor channel. And the most popular one is the individual agents, followed by corporate agents, then insurance brokers. Nowadays, we have new type of distribution channels. We have IMF, insurance marketing firms, web aggregators, point of sale distributors. Like that, we have new distribution channels which are trying to improve the insurance penetration in the country. But otherwise, traditionally, you have the insurance agents, individuals, followed by the corporate agents, which is the company type of formation representing the insurance company and trying to sell the product. Like, for example, all banks, if you go to a bank, a commercial banks under universal banking model, they sell all types of financial products under one roof. That includes insurance products, life, general, health, along with mutual fund, trading, demat, commodity, derivatives, credit card, debit card, apart from the conventional commercial banking. They sell all these products, and that includes insurance. So this is called universal banking model. So in this model, banks are acting as corporate agents of these insurance companies. NBFCs, broking firms, they all act as corporate agents to this insurance company, and they provide the trading, the platform to buy insurance policies, right? We have the most important, insurance is a capital intensive industry. You need to keep on bringing in capital as you keep writing the policies, as you increase your risk of claims. To meet your capital adequacy norms, you need to keep on bringing in capital. It's a constant game. As you increase the business, bring in additional capital. So you need to bring in a lot of capital. To start off, 100 crores are enough. If you want to start off an insurance company, 100 crores are enough. But as you keep increasing the business, you need to bring in more and more capital. So in order to help the companies to raise the capital as and when required, the government has permitted foreign direct investment. Initially, when it started, it was 26% only. This FDI was increased to 49% in 2013. And in the current budget, the finance ministry has permitted 74% FDI in insurance sector. So this way, there will not be any capital constraint for the insurance companies. They can raise the capital as and when required, right? And all the support services, insurance brokers and all these things, their 100% FDI is permitted. Intermediaries, they can raise 100% FDI. You can see the total insurance premium for the financial year 1920 was around 7.31 trillion Indian rupees, which in dollar terms is 94.7 billion, right? In this, the share of life insurance company is 5.72 trillion and general insurance is 1.59 trillion. So in terms of insurance penetration, that's how it is measured. Total, it is something like 3.76% to the GDP of the nation. Out of this, something like just 2.81 or 82 is life insurance, and 0.94 to 95 is general insurance, which is well below the world average. If you look at the world average is something like 7.3, and Asian average is above 4. Asian average is above 4. World average is 7.3, and we are well below the world average as well as the Asian average. So that means still there is a lot of work to be done. So we are almost 20 years since the advent of the private sector insurance companies in India. But even with that, the insurance penetration has improved only from just over 2% to 3.76% as of now. So still there is a lot of work to be done. We are well below the world average and even Asian average, right? So this is the per capita insurance density. That means how much the value of life insurance premium per person per capita. It is 78 US dollars, which is something like 58 US dollars in life insurance and around 19 to 20 US dollars in general insurance, which is also well below the world average. That means we have to still do a lot of work in insurance. Still there is a lot of scope. We have a large population, and our advantage in India, we have certain demographic advantage. We have a lot of people in working age group, 15 to 65 age group is a very significant number in India. Something like 65% of the population belong to this category. And but for Corona, our economy was actually doing very well, and the purchasing power was increasing. And the insurance sector, in fact, is one of the fastest growing with a CAGR of something like 12% during the last 1 decade or so. If you look, the CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, is something like 12%. That means the growth is healthy, but still it is inadequate. There is still a lot of work to do. But the future is very good because the GDP growth is good, and we have a demographic advantage of large working age population, right? So this will, and awareness about insurance. Other thing is awareness about insurance, and a lot of technology related developments. Insure tech, what we call. Lot of insurance. For example, you have ACO insurance, Digi insurance. These are all some of the initiative where you can use the leverage on technology and spread the insurance activity much faster. Awareness and the speed with which you can do the transactions. The role of insure tech in insurance. So that's also growing in prominence. So going forward, it will be very good growth opportunities in insurance sector. This is the profile of the insurance in India. So you can see the CAGR YOY of insurance sector, and also the growth of insure tech. And you have distributors. You can see the individual agents in India are something like 22 lakh agents are there, but unfortunately only 24% are active. A large section of the agents are inactive. Corporate agents are close to 700, just below 700. Insurance brokers are 450. Insurance marketing firms are around 300. And web aggregators something like 30. Policybazaar.com, PolicyTiger.com. These are all your web aggregators. So this is the profile of the insurance industry in India, right? Now moving to life insurance in particular. As I told you, insurance activities are broadly divided into life, non-life, which is also known as general, health, and reinsurance. Okay. So life insurance and all these insurance activities will basically try to give you certain financial protection against what? Against certain risks which are uncertain in nature, which are measurable and which are uncertain in nature. And those type of risks can be insured. So it gives protection if the risk happens. This is the role of insurance, so that the person who is taking insurance cover can live in peace. He can do his financial planning properly, right? So that's the role of insurance. In life insurance, basically the insurance company is trying to give a financial protection to the human life, to the humans as income generating assets. Their life risks are covered. And what are the risks covered? The 4 Ds, what we call in life insurance. 4 Ds, capital D. First D is death. Second D is disease. Third D is disability. Fourth D is dependency. I'm repeating. There are 4 types of risks which are covered in life insurance. They are called the 4 Ds: death, disability, disease, dependency. It is death cover, basically what we call the sum assured. When you are taking a life insurance policy, the risk cover is called sum assured. 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 1 crore. The amount which is mentioned as sum assured is called the risk cover. That means if the risk of death is happening to the policy holder, the insurance company will compensate the policy holder nominees to the extent of that sum assured. Sum assured should the risk arise. So that is basically the life cover. Otherwise, you also have the diseases and disabilities which are covered in the form of rider covers or rider benefits. Riders are add-on benefits which you take over and above the base policy, which is covering the risk of death, and you pay some extra premium for these riders. It is optional, and you can cover your diseases and disabilities also by paying some extra premium through these rider policies. So base policy covering the risk of death, and you have these rider policies which are covering these diseases and disability. And you have the 4th risk, which is called the dependency. Dependency is basically, it is opposite to the concept of life insurance. Life insurance basically will give you a protection against untimely death of a person, a breadwinner, an income earning person in the family suddenly dies. The family will be deprived of that income which he will be making available to the family as long as he works. The sudden death of this person will deprive the family of that income. This is the role of life insurance. But the last risk, dependency, is basically covering the risk of living too long. You are living too long. Too long means what? You have an active working age, what we call a retirement age, something like 60. Okay, most of the regulatory aspect says that you have to retire at 60. Some companies put 58, some 60, some 62, but around 60 on an average, right? So after that, you do not have a job. Even if you are a self-employed guy like that, maybe another 5 years you can work. After that, your physical and mental faculties will come down, and you will not be able to continue to work at the same level. But then you will not have a regular income to support you. So you will have to financially depend on someone, children or some other person, if you do not have regular income. So this 4th risk of dependency is covered by life insurance companies in the form of annuity products, or what we call the pension products. And that covers the risk of living too long or the risk of dependency. So these are the 4 Ds. Okay. Insurance policies. There are 2 types of insurance policies or insurance platforms, what we call traditional and ULIP platforms. These products are offered on traditional and ULIP platforms. Traditional, where you do not face any investment risk. Basically, when the insurance company is giving you a life cover, it is also giving you some extra benefits in the form of bonuses, maturity benefit. If you survive the entire term, you can take a maturity benefit too, which will have something like a sum assured plus certain bonuses which are accumulated, what we call endowment products. We have the pure term plans, endowment plans, whole life plans, and annuity plans. These are the 4 broad life insurance category products. Pure term plans, where only the risk of death is covered. I select a policy term, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and I take a sum assured, which is the risk cover. If I die during the term, my nominees will get the sum assured. If I don't die, I survive the term, nothing will be paid. This is called pure term plan or pure term policy, which is the cheapest in the market, which can be bought online also, right? This is the first and very common variety of products. Pure term plan covers the risk of death. If death is not happening during the term, nothing will be paid. There is nothing called a maturity benefit. They are called pure term policies. They are very cheap. Second is your endowment plan, wherein whether you die or you survive, that sum assured will be paid. If you die, your nominees will get the sum assured, and the accumulated bonuses till the period of the death will be paid to the nominees. If you don't die, if you survive the entire term, then still you are paid the sum assured plus the fully accumulated bonuses for the entire term. It will be paid to you as a maturity benefit. This is called endowment policies. The term endowment means you are endowed with a defined or specified benefits. And what are those specified benefits? Sum assured, whether you survive or die, and the accumulated bonuses till that stage. They are predefined, right? This is how you will be paid. This is endowment plan. Then the third one is whole life policy, which is actually called an estate planning policies in life insurance. Basically, you want to pass on something to your family members as some sort of your property, an asset, which you want to pass on to your successors. Whole life policies are one such policies, wherein as long as you survive, you keep paying premium up to certain age. After that, as and when you die, that sum assured plus accumulated benefits will be paid to your family members. That means the moment you take the policy, you are creating an asset straight away for your family members. As and when you die, the policy benefits will pass on to the family members. So if you are planning a product which is basically meant for your family members, you want to pass on something to your children, grandchildren, like that, this policy works out like that, whole life policy. And the insurance cover is available till the age of 80, 90, 100 also. Okay. Then the last policy is the annuity, which is the covering the risk of dependency or risk of living too long, known as annuity products or pension products. So here, how it works: you select a retirement age, you keep contributing money, premium in the form of premium, accumulate a corpus, a fund till your retirement age, and that fund you hand over to the life insurance company, which will give you annuities or pension as long as you live. After that, if your spouse survives, she will also get. That option is also available. So you are accumulating a retirement corpus with the life insurance company. Upon maturity or attaining the retirement age, this will be converted into a pension corpus or annuity corpus, and you will get regular pension or annuities as long as you live. After that, you have a choice of giving to your spouse also, as long as she lives. If she survives you, she will also get the pension. This option is there. I'm talking of the basic products. A lot of other varieties are there in pension products, but this is a basic variety of a pension product. So these are four basic products offered in your traditional plans. There are certain variations available in these products. Pure term plan, as I told you, only death benefit, but it comes with a variation, pure term plan with return of premium. In a pure term plan, normally, if you don't die, nothing will be paid, right? But in a pure term plan with return of premium, okay, you select the policy term, say 20 years, and you select a sum assured, let's say 25 lakhs. During these 20 years, if you don't die, nothing will be paid normally. But in this plan, like pure term plan with return of premium, during these 20 years, what all premiums you have paid, they will be returned back to you without any interest, bonus, dividend, nothing. Whatever premiums you paid me, I'll give back to you. This is pure term plan with return of premium. This is a variation in this product. This is very popular in village, rural areas, right? Then you have a second product, endowment, in which the variation is money back policies, wherein you will get this sum assured paid in installment if you survive certain period. They are called survival benefits. You take a 20-year policy with a sum assured of, let us say, 50 lakhs. Every 4 years, you will be paid 1/5 of the sum assured, that is 10 lakhs. You survive for 4 years, get 10 lakhs. You survive another 4 years, get 10 lakhs. You survive entire 20 years, whatever already paid, You take it out, remaining balance will be paid to you along with the bonuses. This is survival benefit, in other words known as money back policies. Basically, they are designed to meet the liquidity requirements of your family, something like your children's education. You want to plan for your child's education. You want certain intermediate cash flows, to fund the 10th class education, intermediate education, graduation, post-graduation. At some periodical intervals, you need cash inflow. To fund such cash inflows, this product is designed in that manner. You can get survival benefits at certain periodical intervals. If you survive the entire term, balance sum assured along with bonuses will be paid. But the interesting point in this product is if the person dies anywhere in between, even if he has drawn some sum assured, full sum assured will be paid along with the accumulated bonuses. That's a feature of these money back policies. Of course, they all come at a cost. Money back policies premium is more than compared to the regular endowment plan. Naturally, when I'm giving you a benefit, extra benefit, it comes with certain extra cost, right? So this is endowment. Whole life has one variation now. Whole life come endowment plan means normally in a whole life plan, the policyholder does not enjoy any benefits. He will only keep accumulating, and after his death, it will go to the family members. During his lifetime, he will not enjoy. So to bring a variation to this, okay, you also enjoy, you give some benefit to family also. You are paying premium, and this premium has a saving content and has a pure risk content, pure risk cover content. So the saving content in the form of bonuses, you can draw after attaining certain age, usually retirement age, say 60. You draw all the savings, accumulated bonuses. After that, it will be a pure term plan. As and when you die, the sum assured will be paid to the family. So it is a double benefit. You enjoy during your lifetime. As and when you die, sum assured will pass on to the family members. So this is a variation in this one. And in annuity plans, you have a lot of variations. Immediate annuity plan, deferred annuity plan, annuity for self, then self and spouse, annuity certain. Like that, there are some varieties I'm telling. There are a lot of other varieties. Immediate annuity means you have already accumulated some savings in the form of PF, gratuity, and all that. If you are an employee, even if you are not an employee, you have a PPF, which you can accumulate. So you have accumulated certain fund. Now you want a pension. Hand over this fund to insurance company and start drawing annuities. This is immediate annuity. You are retired now. You do not have a separate retirement plan, but you already have certain accumulated balances in the form of a PF or a gratuity or a leave encashment or some other savings. You have accumulated a big amount. Out of this, okay, whatever amount you want to give to insurance company as a pension fund and start drawing pension immediately. This is immediate annuity plans. Deferred annuity plan is you do a planning, retirement planning. Let's say you are 30 years now. You are 30 years now. You select a retirement age which is 60. You start accumulating your savings from 30 to 60. That retirement corpus. Small amounts you contribute regularly from your salary or regular income. Accumulate the retirement corpus. And then you pass it on to insurance company, which will give you pension till you pass away. That is deferred annuity. Immediate annuity, deferred annuity. You also have annuity for self and spouse. And another variety is annuity certain. In the sense, I am retired, okay, 60. I'm normally, if everything goes well, I'm normally supposed to live up to say 80, 90 like that, if not 100. But unfortunately, for some reason, I die at 64, let's say. What happened? I accumulated all these savings for so long a period. Unfortunately, I'm dying very early after retirement. Now all these savings go waste, is it not? So to give some benefit to to remove this type of concerns or fears in the mind of the people who are taking these policies, there is one option available called annuity certain, which says that whether you live or don't live up to this age, let us say 70, 75, whether you are living or not living, still this much pension will be paid. If you are living, will pay you, else to the family. Annuity certain. This variation is also there. So these are some of the life insurance products which are available. Then in the traditional category, there is no investment risk for the policyholder. The investments are made as per IRDA defined guidelines, and majority of the investments will get into government and government approved securities where the safety element is high, risk element is very low. And from the returns, the insurance company will pay you certain bonuses or guaranteed additions. I need to tell you two technical words here. In traditional plans, you have par policies, non-par policies. Okay, or that is short words. The longer words are participating policies, non-participating policies. In participating policies, the policyholder will participate in the benefits of the investments. So here he will get variable bonuses. Bonuses are declared by insurance company at some periodical intervals, usually every year. And once they are declared, they are added to your policy fund, your policy value. It's a legal liability for the company. Every year they declare bonus, and that is added to the policy value, right? They are called participating policies. They get variable bonuses. The other variety is non-participating. So if in a participating, if I do very well, I'll get higher bonuses. It can be or higher dividends or higher bonuses, 8%, 9%, 12%. It can be anything. And there can be one terminal bonus also. If I have some underwriting surplus, what we call in insurance language, underwriting surplus means I'm pricing a policy product expecting 5 people to die out of 100 every year. But in a year, only 3 people die. 2 people did not die. So this is my surplus. I paid claims only for 3 people now because only 3 people died. 2 people did not die. That is my surplus. This is my underwriting surplus. So whenever the company is having such underwriting surplus, from that, the company will pay terminal bonuses to the policyholders. Whenever the company is accumulating such surpluses every year, because of number of people dying are less than what is expected, the company accumulates the surpluses. From these surpluses, company can pay you terminal bonus also. A recurring bonus called reversionary bonus, interim bonus, and terminal bonus. Like that, 3 bonuses are paid by the life insurance company under the traditional participating policies. They are variable. Depending on the performance of the company, the bonuses keep on varying. This is participating policies. In non-participating policies, irrespective of my performance, I will give you certain percentage of guaranteed additions calculated as percentage on sum assured every year. 5%, 6% like that, guaranteed additions on the sum assured. I will keep on adding to your policy every year. It is non-variable. It is like, very simple, not difficult to understand. You have a bank fixed deposit and you have a mutual fund equity. What's the difference? Fixed deposit will give you a fixed interest rate, right? 7 or 8%, whatever is the committed interest rate is what will be paid. Whereas equities values are going up and down, up and down. Equity mutual fund you have put going up, down, up, down. If the fund is performing very well, it will give you very good returns, or maybe sometimes lower returns. That's variable returns are provided by equities. So here also it's the same thing. In participating policies, variable bonuses depending on the performance of the company. In non-participating, irrespective of my performance, I will give you certain guaranteed additions by way of percentage of addition to your sum assured every year. This is non-participating. When you open the financial statements of a life insurance company, they will show their premium collected or income under these two categories: traditional, participating, traditional, non-participating. But either way, in both the cases, the policyholder does not face any investment risk because they are predominantly invested in government securities as per the IRDA defined guidelines. So the risk element is very, very low. That's why the insurance company is able to give you guaranteed additions, bonuses like that. But the disadvantage here in traditional policies are the returns are low. If the markets are doing very well, you don't get the benefit of that because mostly they are into safe securities. They are like, fixed type of returns. So if equity markets are doing very well, you don't get the benefit of that. So if a policyholder wants to get the benefit of market-based investments plus insurance protection also, he wants both protection, investment benefits, then the answer is ULIPs, unit linked insurance plans, wherein you decide how much premium you want to pay, subject to certain minimum amount, say 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 like that. You decide how much you want to set aside. From that amount, I will deduct my charges, and the remaining amount I will invest in the market according to your choice. Like in mutual funds, I'm giving you a fund choice, right? I'm giving you equity, and within equity, I'm giving you large cap, mid cap, small cap, index, ETF, multi cap. Like that, within equity, I'm giving you varieties. And debt, I'm giving you government bond funds, corporate bond funds, PSU bank funds. Like that, I'm giving you options in debt instruments also, or money market funds. Mutual funds gives you all these varieties. Similarly, ULIPs also will give you a fund choice. Okay, you decide the premium. We will deduct the mortality charges. Life insurance charges are called mortality charges. The risk cover, the risk of death, which I am covering, their charge is called mortality charge. The mortality charge, the policy administration charges, and the fund management charges. Once I deduct that, the balance amount is available for investment in the market. I'm giving you, like mutual fund, I'm giving you a choice. You tell me where you want the money to be invested. So in the policyholder can choose the fund which is suitable to his financial planning needs or his risk taking capacity. If he can take risk, he can go for equity funds. He cannot take too much risk, get into bond funds. And within bond fund also you have government bond funds, corporate bond funds. And within equity you have large cap, mid cap, small cap, and you have passive funds like index and ETFs. So I'm giving, like mutual funds, I'm giving you a choice. You select. So I'm giving you risk cover. So if the person dies, sum assured will anyway be paid. But if you are surviving, your money is invested in the market and it will give you a return which is market related return. If markets are doing very well, you will get that return. If markets are not doing too well, maybe lower returns. So the variable returns, market linked returns, I'm offering you if you are willing to take the risk. So the two types of policies, traditional ULIPs, unit linked insurance plans. Traditional are for those people who do not want to take any risk. They will get bonuses, guaranteed additions along with the risk cover. But these policies are simple and easy to understand, but they are very rigid, not flexible. And they give you low returns. Low returns means something like 4, 5, 6%, and maybe 7% max, not more than that. But in ULIPs, yes, along with the risk cover, I'm also giving you market-based returns. Market-based returns are varying from 8 to 15% in between. Between 8 to 15% in between, you can get a return. You choose. I'm giving a choice. I'm offering you both the products. Right? Insurance activity also has certain, coming to the operational aspects, certain important principles are there in life insurance. Any commercial contract, there is something called buyer beware or caveat emptor, what we call. Yeah. So before you buy something, you are supposed to read the description of the product or service carefully, fully read, understand, inquire if you are not understanding, and then make a buy decision. Later on, you cannot complain. This is called buyer beware or caveat emptor. This is in a typical commercial contract. But in insurance contract, it is exactly the opposite. The buyer of the policy is called in insurance language the proposer. The proposer is supposed to disclose all material facts in the proposal form. In commercial contracts, seller has to disclose, buyer has to read, understand, and buy. In insurance contract, buyer has to disclose in good faith, the principle of utmost good faith, euberrima fides, what we call. And the seller, which is the insurance company, is supposed to go through the content of the proposal, read, understand the risk in that, and then give the policy. Exactly opposite. Commercial contracts, seller is disclosing, buyer is understanding and buying. In insurance, the buyer called proposer is disclosing under the principle euberrima fides or utmost good faith. He is supposed to disclose all material facts in good faith and sign a declaration that what he is stating here is true and correct. Seller has to read it, assess the risk in the proposal, and that assessing the risk in the proposal in technical words in insurance is called underwriting. You come across the word underwriting in insurance. It means the process of assessing the risk in the proposal based on the material facts disclosed in the proposal form. I assess the risk and I will take a call on the proposal whether to give the policy to this proposer or not. If so, how much? And whether it is at normal premium or extra premium. Give or not, how much, at what premium. This decision making depends on the underwriting process. Means assessing the risk. So for that, the proposer has to disclose all material facts. Now, what do you mean by material fact? Material fact are all those facts which will influence the decision of the seller to give the policy or not. And if so, at what price? What are those material facts? Age. So I must disclose my age correctly because premium varies from age group to age group. Different age groups, different premiums are there. So I must give my age correctly, age proof correctly. Second, my health condition. If I am suffering from any unknown illnesses, I mean only if I tell you know, otherwise you don't know. If I'm suffering from something, I must reveal that. Then the insurance company will ask me to undergo certain medical tests. Third is family health history. What is your family health history? How, whether parents are alive, if they died, how they died, what age they died, were they suffering from any illness? And are you suffering from any illnesses like are you having diabetes or hypertension or any other health issues? You have to disclose them. Then your habits and hobbies. If you are in the habit of smoking, drinking, you must disclose that. If you don't disclose, okay, still you will get the policy. But the problem is when the death happens, claim comes, if the doctor certifies that this fellow died due to lung problem caused by heavy smoking, and he must have been smoking for the last 10 years to reach this stage. If doctor gives the reason for death, and then if insurance company checks when this policy was taken, and if he was smoking from that stage onwards, insurance company has all the rights to reject the claim because he has given incorrect information. So that material fact related to his habits, hobbies, nature of job, and what are the risks he's exposed to during his employment, whether any dangerous works he's handling, habits, hobbies, family health history. All these things are material facts based on which the insurance company will decide, okay, should I subject him to certain medical tests, and should I charge him some extra premium called risk extra, or should I put a ceiling on the sum assured for him? Like that, he will take a decision. So for this purpose, this proposer has to disclose all material facts and sign a declaration at the bottom of the proposal form saying that this, what is he declaring is true. And it has 2 years warranty, means what he is declaring must hold good for at least 2 years. This is covered under the provision section 45 of Insurance Act, which is the 2 years warranty. If claim comes in the first 2 years, insurance company can reject the claim as an early claim, and now the onus of not hiding any facts lies with the proposer. But if after 2 years the death happens, insurance company cannot reject the claim unless they have a solid proof that there is some fraud in it. Generally, early claim, insurance company can reject the claim, and the policyholder family has to prove that he has not hidden any material facts. But after the 2 years period, if death happens, the position is reversed now. Insurance company cannot reject the claim normally unless they have a solid proof of a fraud. Okay, so that is the importance of that material facts and the warranty on material facts under section 45 of Insurance Act 1938, right? Then there is another important thing in that proposal form called section 41, which says that insurance agents cannot lure the policyholders to buy policy from them, saying that, okay, if you buy the policy from me, I will get 20% commission of your premium. Suppose you are paying 10,000 premium, I will get 2,000 commission. Okay, after out of that, I will give you 1,000 commission. So please buy the policy from me. This is a wrong practice. This is prohibited under section 41 of Insurance Act. Giving sharing the commission paid to the agent with the policyholder and luring them to buy the policy is prohibited under section 41 of Insurance Act. Okay, so this principle of good faith, disclosure, utmost good faith. Second is insurable interest is another important principle in life insurance. Akinchan, you can stop me if you think that I should stop. You can let me know, or you can tell me how much time is left.
Because no, sir, please carry on. It's very interesting, and I think this is covering the practical dimensions of the insurance subject, and this is what is market applied. It's a market research oriented concept. Yep. So I think that these are very, very crucial topics, because yep, now these are all like a case study oriented approach.
Okay, thank you. So you can tell me as and when you want me to stop, you can tell me. I will stop, right? Okay. So the second one is insurable interest. Means when I can take insurance policy covering my own life. In that case, I am the proposer, I am the life insured. I can take in my life, I have insurable interest. In the sense, the word insurable interest means if the subject matter, means the asset which is insured, the human life, dies, the dependents lose that financial benefit. That financial interest relation has to be there. See, if I take a life insurance policy on my own life and make my wife and children nominee, it is natural. If I die, because they depend on me financially. So they have insurable interest in my life. So I take insurance cover in my life, on my life, and make them nominees. This is very natural. Akinchan and myself, we are good friends. So can I take a policy and make Akinchan as a nominee? No. This is because Akinchan is only a friend. Akinchan is not financially dependent on me. He is only a friend. If I die, he will suffer emotional loss. A loss of a friend is an emotional loss for a friend, but there is no financial loss. So he cannot be nominee to this policy. Only the financially dependent wife, children, parents, they have insurable interest in my life. So I can take a policy on my own life and make my family as the nominees, or I can be a proposer and my wife can be a life insured, my children can be life insured, because their loss is my financial loss, because ultimately I'm also dependent on them. So I can take a insurance policy making my wife and children as the life insured and I as the proposer. This dependence, financial dependence amongst ourselves is called insurable interest. In other words, in general insurance, I will tell you, I have purchased a new car. I put my money and I have purchased a new car. Can Akinchan take an insurance policy on my car? And suppose I damage my car, can Akinchan take the damage benefits? Compensation? No, because the car is owned by me. I have paid the money, and if any loss or damage is happening to that car, I am suffering loss. This term is called insurable interest. Means if the risk is happening to the subject matter, the fellow who is taking the insurance policy must be in a position to suffer a financial loss. That is called insurable interest. So in life insurance as well as general insurance, there has to be a insurable interest. Only difference is in life insurance, the insurable interest has to be there at the beginning of the policy, inception of the policy. Whereas in general insurance, it has to be there at both beginning as well as at the time of claim. That's the difference. Life insurance policies are long-term renewable policies. General insurance policies are all short-term, only 1 year, and you issue fresh policies. In life insurance, you don't issue policy document every year, only once, and they are renewed by paying the renewed premiums. Okay. Life insurance, this is the second principle, insurable interest. The third important principle in life insurance is your indemnity, principle of indemnity. Means making good the loss only. Now, in general insurance, it's very easy to understand. I'll tell you and then I'll go to life insurance. Suppose I buy a car worth 5 lakhs and take insurance cover of 5 lakhs. And I make a small accident and the bumper gets damaged. And I go for a claim. How much the insurance company will compensate me? To the extent of the cost of the bumper, say 10,000 rupees. So the insurance company will compensate me to the extent of the replacement of that bumper, which is 10,000 rupees. Though I have 5 lakhs cover, I cannot claim 5 lakhs just because I got 5 lakhs insurance cover. Insurance company will compensate me to the extent of the loss only, which is 10,000 rupees, the bumper cost. This is called principle of indemnity, means making good the loss. Similarly, in life insurance company, actually I have unlimited insurable interest in me. I can take any amount of insurance cover. But if it is so, there can be a lot of frauds in life insurance. I can take a life insurance cover of 100 crores and then I die. So family will get 100 crores. There will be some people who will do that. Now, do I really need 100 crores? Then how do I fix how much insurance cover I need? So in insurance, life insurance, there is a concept called human life value. What is a human's life's value? So what is your active earning phase? What are your earnings? What are your future earnings? You discount that with inflation and arrive at a figure which is the gross HLV, gross human life value. You add the assets and deduct the You add the liabilities, deduct the assets, liquid assets, you get the net H human life value. To that extent, I will give you. There is another method called need analysis, but I am telling you the very basic one, human life value. So your earnings value in present day terms, all future earnings, expected earnings, discounted with inflation factor, is your gross human life value. You add all existing liabilities to that and deduct all liquid assets from that. You get the net human life value. And insurance, you need that much insurance cover. So there is a method of computing. So I am telling you at a very basic level, there are a prescribed formats for all the human life values. So basically your income minus statutory expenses minus your personal expenses, and that you take it for the remaining active working phase, discount with inflation, you arrive at the gross human life value. There is a method of calculating that. I'm giving you in a very short and easily understandable way. So gross human life value, net human life value. This is what is your basic insurance need. There are other methods called need analysis method, where you also take into account your planned liabilities like children's education, marriage, those things also, right? So the human life value keeps a ceiling on your life insurance cover need. So that is works as an indemnity in life insurance. Otherwise, life insurance policies are called benefit policies. General insurance policies are called indemnity policies. Life insurance, you can take any amount of cover, but the ceiling is put by the insurance companies deliberately so that there are no frauds in this. And a person takes insurance cover according to his need, but unwanted, unnecessary insurance cover is not taken. To put that, there is a method of computation which is put in place called human life value method, right? So if a Mukesh Ambani comes and asks for 100 crores insurance cover, there is some meaning in that because he has got that much earnings. But if a newly joined employee in a bank or a software company, if he's asked for 100 crores insurance cover, that doesn't make a sense, right? So to put a ceiling, this human life value concept has been put. So this is principle of indemnity, which is generally applicable to mainly to general insurance, to life insurance, to the extent of that human life value. These are common for life and general. Otherwise, general insurance has got some other principles called principle of contribution, principle of subrogation, principle of causa proxima, like that, which are applicable to general insurance, which I leave to my other panel member who is going to talk about general insurance, right? In insurance, you have distributors called individual agents. Life insurance agency is a very what I say career oriented one. It's a long-term career oriented one. A lot of people make it as a career. Okay, just for your information, the richest insurance agent in the world, Gideon du Plessis, his earnings are more than 10 crore rupees in Indian rupees, more than 10 crore. We have in India, life insurance agents whose earnings are more than 4 crores per annum. There are at least half a dozen such people whose earnings are more than 4 crores per annum on life insurance agency. So you have individual agents, which is a very popular form of insurance agency. As I told you, 22 lakh insurance agents are there, though only 24-25% are active. But a lot of people make a career out of it. So there are eligibility conditions which are put. Micro insurance agents, it's only 10th standard. Otherwise, 12th standard is required. You need to pass one examinations prescribed by IRDA. Then you need to undergo certain compulsory practical training. Then you can start selling the insurance policies. But individual agents are captive agents. They can sell the policies of only one insurance company. They are captive agents. Once they are taken by one insurance company, life insurance company, they cannot sell the policies of other insurance companies. They are called captive agents. Individual agents are captive agents. But coming to corporate agency, where a company is representing the life insurance company, they are called corporate agents. Like banks, NBFCs, broking firms, they can sell life insurance policies as corporate agents. They can represent 3 companies, 3 life insurance, 3 general insurance, 3 health insurance. Three companies they can represent. That is corporate agents, which is a body corporate, a company type of formation, wherein there is a principal officer who has to pass certain eligibility examination and training to act as a principal officer. And this corporate agent can employ agents who also have to pass this examination and training to sell insurance policies. Right? So this is a corporate agency. There are something like 700 corporate agents in India. Then there is insurance brokers. Remember, the agents represent the client, the buyer. They mainly see the benefit or interest of the buyer. Broker, I mean to say they are representing the company and they will try to sell the products of that company basically. Of course, they see the interest of they will try to protect the interests of the policyholder, but they are mainly pushing the products of the company which they are representing, the insurance companies. Whereas insurance broker mainly represents the buyer. He represents the buyer. He will try to get the best possible quote from the insurance sellers. He is represent. Normally, insurance brokers are employed by big companies, company type of clients who are looking, for policies. For example, group insurance. A company wants to take group insurance policy on the name of the employees. They will give the assignment to the insurance broker. Insurance broker will negotiate with different insurance companies and will get quotes from them. And the best quote he will pass on to this client, and the client can take it. So in insurance broker, he can sell the policy of any company. He will represent the buyer. He will try to get the best possible quote from different insurance companies. That's a difference. Agent and broker, that's a difference. Agent represents the company. He will try to sell the product of the company. Individual agent is the captive agent of the company, whereas the corporate agent represents three companies. Broker, on the other hand, represents the client, buyer. Usually big clients take the services of the broker, especially for products like group insurance, right? So insurance broker also, there is a separate eligibility criteria, training, examination, training, principal officer. All these are licenses are valid for usually 3 years and they are renewable. Then there is a capital requirement, right? Examination, capital requirement, training, all these things are involved when you take up these agencies, right? Agent, individual agent, corporate agent, broker, IMF. There is a new concept which came, IMF, not very new, but in recent times, some 3-4 years back, insurance marketing firms. Now this fellow can sell the insurance products in 3 districts, and he can sell other products also. He can sell not only insurance, he can sell other financial products also, like mutual funds, PF, post office products, and those things also. He will also employ agents to sell the policies, insurance marketing firm. Then there is web aggregator, whose job is to collect the data related to different insurance companies, put on his website. He needs to maintain a website. He will collect the data related to products of different insurance companies, and his job is to facilitate comparison and make it available to the buyer. Buyer can visit his website and all the comparisons are available for each product, for Pure Term Plan, Whole Life, Endowment, ULIPs, and all these. The comparative in terms of cost, features, everything is made readily available by the aggregator. So this fellow can buy the policy after making the comparison through that web aggregator site itself. So if the buy decision is made through the web aggregator site, web aggregator will get the commission. Why I should go through the aggregator? Because I can make a comparison and I can buy it online. I can make a comparison. This is the value addition which they are making, right? So these are some of the distributors. The other important people in life insurance activity, you have actuaries which are there, who are the technical people. They do the risk modeling, assessing the pricing of the product, risk assessment, risk modeling, pricing of the product, designing the product, and also risk management, compliance. All these things are done by the actuary. He's a technical guy in life insurance. It requires a specialized qualification called actuarial professional courses are there. Otherwise, you have actuarial diplomas which are offered by IARM. Basically, you join as an actuarial. Your job is to do the risk modeling, estimating the risks in terms of the mortality rates, morbidity rates, those things, and what is the likely claim. So how much premium should I fix? Then risk management, underwriting, everything. The main functions of this is actuary. He's a technical person. Otherwise, you have other main functions: claims management, actuary, underwriting, claims management, investment, policy servicing. These are the key activities in life insurance, right? Same is the case with general insurance also. There are 24 life insurance companies, LIC being the dominant with 70% market share. There are another remaining 23 are the private sector led by your ICICI, HDFC, all these people are there. 23 private sector life insurance companies, right? So I've shown you what is the market size also, and the growth rate, insurance penetration, and all these things. So I will stop here, and now I'll invite questions. I will answer to your specific questions. I will try to answer.
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir. This was a wonderful talk. Sir, one query that is coming quite often to us
Yeah.
from the economics perspective, that is when it comes to the insurance product, take it
Yeah.
life insurance product,
Yeah.
especially in the tier 2 and tier 3 towns, what is the propensity to consume, if we see? Means because we're talking about financial inclusion. Government has been talking financial inclusion, putting unbanked population like into the formal financial network.
Yeah.
Insurance is also one of the financial product and very significant financial product in view of the developing economy like ours, and where we are prone to numerous risks, like COVID is also has taken a lot of lives, it's taken a toll on a lot of people. So the risk factor for us is very high. We are exposed to risk. So,
Correct.
sir, as an insurance professional, you have been in the industry for a long time. How do you see insurance products are picking up or gaining steam in tier 2 and tier 3 towns of India?
Yes. Okay. Unfortunately, in India, insurance is a push product, not a pull product, because the very concept of death benefit, I don't see the money if I die. This is something which creates a negative feeling about insurance activities. That's the reason why a lot of people they are not readily inclined to buy insurance. Right from beginning, only except for certain urban areas, mainly in tier 2 rural areas, semi-urban areas, the awareness is less, and it has a negative connotation. Insurance means death benefit. And people believe that they are not going to die immediately, or they are not going to die early. So, but slowly, as you see, we can see so many types of risk exposures. We have accidental deaths, diseases, illnesses, corona. Now we see corona. Who expected something like corona 2 years back? But today it's a major problem for all of us. So the problem in those areas is, first of all, lack of awareness, lack of education about the importance of insurance. What is the importance of insurance? Because we see a lot of people, especially farmers, dying, committing suicide, dying, and people are dying due to diseases, illnesses, accidents. Family members are left with no income. It happens, but still people were not buying insurance readily. That's because of lack of awareness, education, or the negative feeling about insurance. In those areas, it was not so. Only some urban areas, yes. But of late, this trend is slowly changing. That awareness is now developing, right? The basic insurance need. Also, making the product simple, easily understandable, and they are very cost conscious also, keeping the product in a simple and cost effective way is one way of actually making them to buy insurance policy. So that is, the efforts are being made in that direction. There are products which are designed in a very simple way. Pure term plan at a very low cost, pure term plan with return of premium. This is one thing. Product designing, and then reaching out to them in terms of the formalities. For example, KYC is there. This is also a financial product. KYC is mandatory as per PML Act, AML guidelines. You need to comply with the KYC norms. So KYC means your ID proof, address proof, and all those things. So minimizing the KYC formalities up to certain amount. These are the initiative from government. Okay, minimizing the formalities means very low documentation or simple documentation with which you can buy these policies. So that government initiative and product designing from the insurance companies itself, and the awareness, spreading the awareness, and finally the technology related. Nowadays, your payment banks are there. Their job is to promote financial inclusion. Now the payment banks are also promoting insurance premium payment through their platform. Paytm, we know all of us know Paytm is good for remittances. Do you know Paytm is also good for insurance payments? Paytm Life, Paytm General. You can make digital payments towards insurance premium. This type of digital push, along with financial inclusion, awareness, is slowly creating that inclination of propensity to buy insurance in India. And yes, moving forward, as the new generation are getting more educated, more aware, and with the benefits of technology, the penetration will definitely go up. That's what we
Thank you,
expect.
sir. So we're looking for an optimistic future. Very shortly, we
Yes.
can see to
Yes.
the proliferation of the information.
Yes.
The information on the insurance products.
That's
I think
right.
this product is going to go.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Next
much,
question.
sir, for this wonderful session. Actually, we have received few other queries also from the students, which I want to share with you so that you can give light on those queries and student will get information about those queries and clarifications.
Sure.
So
You can
first
ask
to
me.
our question, you have explained in detail difference between the life insurance and general insurance. But one of the students want to know the difference between the life insurance company and a general insurance company. Can a company can do work in both the field, or they need to register separately?
They need to have separate licenses. They need to have separate licenses, separate setup, separate capital, separate compliances. They are to be registered separately. For example, you have ICICI Prudential Life Insurance Company, ICICI Lombard General Insurance Company, HDFC Standard Life Insurance Company, HDFC Ergo General Insurance Company. You can see they are registered separately. Both belong to HDFC is the parent bank, parent promoter, holding company or a parent company. They are subsidiaries. But HDFC Life is separately registered, HDFC General is separately registered. Similarly, ICICI Life is separately registered, General is separately registered. So you need to have separate registration, separate setup, separate capital inflow, and separate compliances. They are separate, independent. Promoter can be same. Promoter can be same, but they are separately licensed and registered.
Setup different must be different.
Yeah.
Sir, another query we have received is, who are corporate agents? Although you have gave some information about the corporate agents, but can you please enlarge the idea of what is the corporate agent, how they work?
Yeah. Individual agents, as I told you, are individuals, single persons who comply with the eligibility norms and pass the examination, and they are captive. They represent one company only. Whereas corporate is a company type of formation, which is acting as agent of the insurance company. He's also an agent. The company is also an agent only. The company is also representing the insurance company, like agency business. But the difference is here, you are representing 3 insurance companies. You are allowed to represent 3 insurance companies, 3 life, 3 general, 3 health. Under each category, 3 companies you can represent. And you need to have one principal officer who has to be qualified and to act as principal officer and report into the regulator. He is responsible for our regulatory compliance. And this corporate agent in turn can appoint the employees as insurance agents. See, very similar to mutual fund. In mutual funds, you have mutual fund distributors, MFDs. Earlier they were called IFAs. But you can also be an employee and sell mutual fund. A bank employs people to sell mutual funds. They are also passing the same examination, but they are working as employees and representing and selling the mutual fund products. And they can also be independent advisors, mutual fund advisors. Same is the case in insurance. Insurance, you can be an individual agent. You do business, you earn commission, you represent one company. Corporate agent employs people as employees who also pass the exam and sell the insurance policies. And they are employees of that corporate agent, which is representing the insurance companies. And the regulatory compliance is done by the principal officer, not the employees. The principal officer does the regulatory compliance. So that's a corporate setup. They operate in a much bigger way, bigger volume of business. They employ people, and they have one person who is responsible for all regulatory aspects. That's corporate agent. He can represent, as I told you, three companies. There are roughly around 700 corporate agents in India. Yeah. Okay. And also all banks, NBFCs, broking firms, they all come under this corporate agent category. Okay, please continue with
another query we have received. What are the factors that influence the mortality of life insured?
Mortality is the rate of death, probability of dying at different ages. That's a mortality. The measurement of the risk of death is called mortality in life insurance. In health insurance, we call it morbidity rate. Life insurance, we call mortality. The rate of death, probability of death, risk of dying in different age groups in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. This is called risk modeling, which is done by the actuary, right? So the mortality or the rate of death depends on several factors. The primary factor is the age. Older you are, the chance of you dying early is higher. Younger you, and vice versa. Younger you are, chances are less. So if you are a 50-year-old guy and a 25-year-old guy, 50-year-old guy has more chance of dying early than a 25-year-old under normal conditions, not accidental death, normal death I'm talking. So mortality depends on age, health condition. How healthy are you? Are you suffering from any health issues, problems, diseases? Third, disabilities, deformities you already have, then your mortality will be greater. Habits and hobbies, nature of job that you are doing. You are working in a mine, you are working in an explosive factory. The chance of you dying early are much greater. So the nature of job, the risk exposures in the job, family health history, that will tell you whether you can have any hereditary problems. All these will decide the mortality of a person. Yeah, you are not audible. You are not audible.
Sir, our next question is related to something very unusual event, which is suicide. Let me take one example for that, so that it can be make easy to us for understand. One of our customer, Mr. Anil, had purchased a life insurance policy on 1st January 2018, and he had committed suicide on 10th November 2019. Mrs. Anil was the nominee for this policy. Will Mrs. A get the claim?
Okay. So from what you told me, I gather it's more than 1 year. He committed suicide after 1 year. After 1 year of taking the policy. Am I right?
Yeah, but check
the dates. Before 2 years, but after 1 year. The rule is very clear. Yes, if suicide is committed, claim can be paid, provided the suicide is committed after 1 year of the policy. It's a very funny thing. You may ask how, whether it's 1 year or 2 years, it should be the same. Yeah. But see how the insurance company thinks. If you have an intention to commit suicide and take a policy, that means you want to take advantage of the insurance policy benefits. It's called moral hazard. In a technical language of insurance, we call it moral hazard. Means you want to take undue advantage of the insurance. You take a high sum assured, commit suicide, family will get good money. So if you are taking an insurance policy with an intention to commit suicide and then give the benefits to the family, you normally would do within 1 year, because committing suicide is not something which everyone can do anytime. Because a suicide person thinks of a suicide when only he is in certain highly distressed state of mind, and that feeling of committing suicide will last only for few minutes, few hours, maybe extreme cases, few days. Only that moment, few moments, you will have that feeling. After that, you are normal. Again, you don't feel like committing suicide. Maybe few hours. And at that highly distressed state of mind, you think of committing suicide. So if you have an intention to take policy and commit suicide, you will not wait too long a period. But insurance companies, as an extra precaution, have kept 1 year period. That means if you have taken the policy with an intention to commit suicide, you will definitely commit within 1 year. So then I can reject the claim. If you commit the suicide within 1 year, no claim will be paid. But after 1 year, if a suicide is committed, how the inference is drawn by the insurance company is that you did not have the intention of committing any suicide at the time of taking the policy. So you thought of suicides and all this, you came much later stage after taking the policy. At the time of taking the policy, you did not have. That's the inference drawn by the insurance company. So as an extra precaution, as I told you, they keep 1 year time. So any suicide committed after 1 year, that means at the time of taking the policy, you did not have the intention. So I will give the claim. So in this case, yes, claim will be paid. 1 year suicide within 1 year, no claim will be paid. After 1 year will be paid, yes. But remember, in group insurance, group life insurance, this clause is not applicable. In a group insurance policy, if employee commits suicide, whether 1 year or after 1 year, no benefit will be paid. Only in individual policies, this clause is there, applicable.
Okay,
Okay.
sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Sir, how insurance plays an important role in financial planning as a tool of for asset protection and also for tax efficient investment?
Yes. Insurance is a very tax effective tool because it is one of the few instruments which will give you 3-level tax benefits. Exempt, exempt, exempt. As a chartered accountant, you know it, Sarika. The 3-level tax benefits: exempt, exempt, exempt. Exempt at entry level, exempt at intermediate level, exempt at exit level. Entry level, when you are paying the premium under section 80C up to 1.5 lakhs. Intermediate level, whenever you are making top-ups or paying extra premiums, they are also eligible for 80C. And whenever you are making partial withdrawals, subject to that lock-in period, remember all of you, life insurance policies have 3 to 5 year lock-in period. Traditional has 3 years, ULIPs have 5 years lock-in period. After that, whatever withdrawals you are making, they are tax-free. This is intermediate tax benefits. Exit level is when death or maturity or surrender, it's happening, they are completely tax-free. Only condition put by the income tax department is that to claim that benefit, the sum assured should be at least 10 times of the annual premium. These tax benefits you will get if the sum assured is at least 10 times of the annual premium. Then only you will get this tax benefit. 3-level tax benefits. So there are very few products in the market which will give you 3-level tax benefit. The one is the PPF. Second is this insurance products. You also have ELSS, which is giving 2-level tax benefits, but 3-level tax benefits only the insurance products, right? Tax efficient. Coming to financial planning, yes. Children's education, children's marriage, retirement, all these long-term financial goals you can plan through insurance policies. You can take endowment policies. There are child benefit plans specifically designed in insurance to meet the children's education needs. You take a child benefit insurance policy, you keep saving. If you survive, the benefits you can use that money for child's education needs. You have a partial withdrawal facilities at periodical intervals to fund the education fees at different levels, like 10th class, 12th class, graduation, post-graduation, like that. Periodical partial withdrawals are permitted in child benefit plans. And maturity benefit can be used for marriage also. Like that, child benefit plans are designed. But in the event of unfortunate death of the person, the child benefits plans are so designed that there will be a sum assured which is paid, which will take care of the child's maintenance. Plus there is a waiver of premium. So you get that maturity benefits. The policy benefits will be paid to the child as if the father is alive and paying the premium. That's called waiver of premium benefit. So sum assured will be paid for maintenance of the child, plus premiums will be paid by the insurance company, and the premium related benefits, maturity benefits, will be paid to child to fund his education cost. Very beautifully designed child benefit plans are there in life insurance. Similarly, retirement, you have annuity plans. You can plan your retirement. Yes, they are available for financial planning. Products specially designed for your long-term financial planning, like children's education, marriage, retirement, even estate planning. Whole life policies, as I told you earlier, are meant for estate planning. In the sense, I want to pass on something to my next generation. I take a whole life policy. Someday I have to die because human life is mortal. So as and when I die, that sum assured along with the benefits, if any, will go to my next generation. So it is a very good estate planning tool also, along with very efficient tax benefits, 3-level tax benefits. Death benefit, maturity benefit, partial withdrawals are tax-free. Premium, whether regular premium, top-ups, they are all giving you ATC benefit. So very efficient tax saving tool and financial planning tool. That's life insurance for you.
Sir, one more question, that is, can a person take a loan on insurance policy?
Yes. A person can take loan against insurance policy, and the loan is given against surrender value. There is a concept called surrender value in life insurance. Surrender value is nothing but your paid up value multiplied by surrender value factor. These are all calculations done by the actuary. We use the mathematical statistical brain in life insurance. He calculates all these surrender values and all that. So first, if you want to take a loan, the surrender value will be calculated. Against that, 90%, usually 90% of the surrender value is given to you as loan. Suppose the surrender value is 5 lakhs. You can take a loan up to 4.5 lakhs. That's how generally they give. And till you repay the loan, no further loan can be given. And policy will be assigned in favor of the life insurance company. When you are taking the loan, the policy is assigned, means you are transferring the rights of the policy, rights of the benefits of the policy to the insurance company. In the sense, if the person after taking the loan dies, the policy benefits in the form of sum assured plus bonuses, whatever is amount, from that amount, the insurance company or any banker who is giving the loan will first recover that loan, and balance amount will be paid to the family. This is called assignment, means transferring the rights of the benefits in the policy to the lender. the insurance company itself will give the loan. Even banks can also give the loan.
Sir, can you tell something about the Keyman insurance policy? Because we discussed, you had told about the insurable value where only family members can make a policy and become nominee of a policy. But this is the exception of this clause which you had discussed. Keyman insurance policy.
Yes, these are all special policies. Keyman insurance, MWPA. Okay, these are all special life insurance policies. Insurable, as I told you, insurable interest has to be there. So insurable interest, there are certain exceptions where, even though you don't have a blood relation, there can be insurable interest. What are those cases? Partnership insurance. One partner has insurable interest in the life of the other partner. Because in partnership firm, the liabilities are joint and several. So if the partner dies, his liabilities will come to the other partner. So this partner has a insurable interest in the life of the other partner. So he can take a life insurance policy in the firm can take the insurance policy in the name of the partner and with the partnership firm as the beneficiary. This is there. Keyman, similarly, Keyman insurance policy, a pure term policy can be taken. Now, what is that policy? There is one employee in my company who is highly skillful. He has got specialized knowledge and skill sets. With his knowledge, experience, and skill sets, he is contributing significantly to my growth, my company's growth, and to my company's profits. If that fellow dies suddenly, my business will collapse or my revenues will fall sharply. It will be a big loss for me financially. In such a case, I can take a pure term plan on the life of that key man. And if that fellow dies, that sum assured will be paid to me, my company. I am a company, I am employing a employee. And that employee is very skillful, knowledgeable, experienced. With his knowledge, skill, and experience, he is contributing significantly to the growth of my company, whose death will cause an irreparable loss to my company. In such cases, I can take key man insurance policy. Key person, because it can be female or male. That's why it is no longer called key man policy. It is called key person policy. If that key person, male or female, dies, that will cause a huge financial loss for me. So if I take an insurance policy with that key man as the life insured and me as the proposer, means the company. If that person dies, the sum assured will be paid to the company. This is key man policy. Only thing is you have to prove that this man is a key man. Your company must be profitable for at least 3 years. Last 3 years, company must be in profit. And this key man, you must prove that he has got that specialized knowledge, skill sets, and because of him, your company is really doing very well. You know Subhash Ghai, film producer. Mukta Arts is name of the company. Subhash Ghai is the key man of that company. Mukta Arts had taken 18 crores insurance policy on the life of Subhash Ghai under Keyman insurance policy. ABCL, owned by Kotak, wanted to take 25 crores life insurance policy on Amitabh Bachchan's life before this private insurance companies came into picture. It is in mid 1990s, 1995, like that. But at that time, Amitabh Bachchan had suffered an accident in a movie called Coolie, and he had damaged his lungs. And his life from the insurance point of view is considered as substandard. So LIC declined, did not give that policy. Otherwise, that would have been a largest keyman policy. ABCL wanted to take on the life of Amitabh Bachchan, but that was not given. So this is keyman policy. A company can take on the life of a key person who, by virtue of his knowledge or skill sets or experience, contributes significantly to the growth of the company. And only pure term policies can be taken. And the sum assured, if the person dies, will go to the company and it is taxable in the hands of the company. Remember, if the death happens, the sum assured is paid to the company and that benefits are taxable in the hands of the company. Yes. Next question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now I want to request to Dr. Akinchan to give 2-3 questions reply so that our
Sure. Please.
Venugopal sir also gets some rest.
Yes, please, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Sir, for our first query we have received, how crop, health and motor insurance driving growth in insurance sector?
Thank you, ma'am. It's very interesting question, very pertinent. And as far as crop insurance concerned, because we see a lot of suicides among the farmer population in India. So in this scenario, some certain vital statistics that is available to us. And as far as the crop insurance segment is concerned, it is one of the soaring incomes because it has contributed almost 20% to gross domestic premiums of non-life insurance companies in the financial year 2020. So this segment is showing a rising trend. And coming to the health insurance, one best part of it, previously what used to happen, health insurance came like on an annual basis. But now the customers can pay their health insurance premium in installments. So that is giving them a financial cushion. Other it was like a financial burden. Now it has financial burden there's a metamorphosis from burden into cushion. Second thing, one of the scheme that has been launched by our government of India is Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana. This has created a magic in this insurance sector because till December 2019, from the launch of this scheme, 154.7 million customers have enrolled. And very importantly, the strong growth, the robust growth which we are experiencing in the automobile sector and which we are going to expect this growth in the next decade because we have a lot of SUVs, passenger vehicles, commercial vehicles, they are coming to the market. This motor insurance is definitely going to key down. Secondly, in this budget 2021, our Honorable Finance Minister has given that, old motor, that replacement policy has come. So once that comes, really takes a shape that the commercial vehicles and the passengers vehicles needs to be replaced because once it is old, because of the pollution, rising pollution, this motor insurance policy is also going to gain a lot of momentum. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akinchan. My next question is, which we have received, what are the crucial factors that are acting as a catalyst in driving the growth of insurance sector, Indian insurance sector?
Okay. See, actually, we can see these drivers into 4 categories. One is the increasing investments. We have a growing demand, that is a robust demand we are experiencing. Policy support from the government and attractive opportunities. Now, let me take one by one what these 4 factors are covering. Now, coming to the increasing investments, if you see there's a reduction in net owned funds requirements from 5,000 crore, that is almost $720 million to rupees 1,000 crore, which is proposed to facilitate onshoring of international transactions. So this is the investment that are rising. Now, going by the budget of 2019-20, 100% foreign direct investment public insurance, as Sir has also covered in his PowerPoint presentation. So these 2 factors really are boosting investments in the insurance sector, which is the need of the hour. Then, as Sir said, that gradually the knowledge among the people for the insurance products is rising. They are understanding the significance of insurance for their loved ones, for themselves, even come to general insurance for their assets. And various innovative products like ULIPs, we have seen very innovative products has come and distribution channels have become very friendly now. Now you have a lot of agents, distribution channel, people are aware of the distribution channels and distribution channels are acting very proficiently. So that is also helping tremendously in creating a robust demand. Then the digitalization, because we are all in the era of digitalization, our government of India is also promoting digitalization. So almost 90% of our prospective customers, existing customers, they are aware of digital platforms. So through the like Paytm, like Sir mentioned, is one of the very good digital platforms, which is, if it can be leveraged, then obviously the insurance premium becomes very convenient and more people will subscribe to the insurance product. See, the point is you have to bring the supplier and the buyer together. From the economics perspective, as an economics student, if I say, I have to bring the buyer and the supplier together. And in this case, digitalization is a catalyst. Digitalization is acting as a conduit to bring these buyers and suppliers together and to promote the sales of the insurance product. Coming to the policy support, especially if you can see the COVID pandemic is going. Last year we started with, then it subsided, and again it has came. The second strain has come. So COVID-19 insurance policies are giving an attraction, giving the foreign tourist. Then Insurance Bill has given Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India full flexibility to formulate regulations for this sector, because that was the need of the hour. More flexibility, more stringent regulations, and more customer-friendly regulations will come. Ayushman Bharat, that is PM Jai Sehat, extended coverage to all residents of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir, which is one of the far-flung state of India, but even they have been, the government is taking full initiative to bring them also, their population also under the fold of insurance. Now, some very cajoling, very attractive, very luring opportunities. Now, no doubt the fact insurance penetration may be low, but the overall penetration as a premium as a percentage of GDP. It is in financial 2019 it stood at 3.71%, and this 3.7%, what is remarkable and noteworthy is it covered the underserved market. That is the of marketing professor Prahlad, he used to say bottom of the pyramid. So here we can see now the insurance sector is reaching to the bottom of the pyramid. It is reaching to the tier 2, tier 3 towns, gradually far-flung areas of India also. Then IRDAI set up a plan to develop a standard structure for title insurance for home buyers, now which is also mandatory under these RERA projects. And life insurance policies are now mostly subscribed in low-income urban areas, because the service class, they are subscribing to these life insurance products. And there is a huge potential growth, tremendous, because this micro insurance is gaining popularity. Micro insurance is gaining market, especially in rural areas, because this micro insurance is very famous in rural areas. So rural folks, rural population, there is a trend, if you see from the statistics, various reports, there is an inclination of the rural population towards this subscription micro insurance. So these are the some factors and the sub factors covered under these main key factors that are driving the growth in Indian insurance sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kinchan. And now I want to request Dr. Venugopal sir, how the increased foreign direct investment in the insurance sector, that is 74%, will help the insurance industry?
Yes. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, see, insurance is a capital intensive industry. To start an insurance company, you need 100 crores capital, fine. But it does not end there. It's not that you once bring in, after that you don't have to bring in. It's not like that. Like in banks, you have that capital adequacy ratio, right? As you keep giving loans, as you build up your risk, that capital adequacy ratio you need to bring in, build up and bring in additional capital. Similarly, insurance also, as you keep on issuing the policies, you are increasing your business by issuing the policies. You are issuing the policies means what? You are giving the sum assured. So and there is a risk of a claim. If these risks crystallize, you need to pay the claim, for which you are making certain risk estimates. And to meet them, you need to meet from your own resources in the form of profits, surplus, and from your capital also. So as per the regulatory guidelines, as you keep increasing your business, your risk exposures are increasing. So you need to proportionately increase your own capital. That means if you want to grow, you want to do more business, you have to keep bringing in additional capital, solvency margin, capital adequacy. These are the words which are used. Basically, as you underwrite more policy, as you write more policies, you have to bring in more capital. So that requirement of capital is on ongoing basis. It's a continuous one. So your promoters must have that much deep pockets to raise the capital as and when required. So which may be a constraint. That's why these foreign partners who can bring in extra capital to meet these additional capital needs, they will be able to help the promoting company here, Indian partner, to supplement their capital and meet the regulatory requirement. So this is the reason why the FDI limit has been increased over a period. Initially, it was 26%, and 2013 it was 49%. Now in this current budget, it is now 74%. So with this, whatever capital constraint that the Indian promoter has, that can be overcome with the help of the foreign partner, right? So they will be able to raise additional capital as and when required and meet the regulatory requirement. So FDI increase will definitely help in enabling these companies to meet their capital requirements and thus promotes the growth of the insurance industry.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Sir, one small question. Actually, we are running of time out. So
Yeah.
I want to your crisp answer for this question. What are the disclosure requirements that have been prescribed by IRDA for life insurance companies under the corporate governance guidelines?
Okay, there are something like 42 disclosure requirements which are there, which are made mandatory by the regulatory body, both for life insurance and non-life, which has some financial disclosure, some non-financial disclosure. Amongst the non-financial disclosure is corporate governance, okay, wherein the disclosures related to appointment of independent directors and the terms and conditions of their appointment as per the provisions of the Companies Act, whether that is been the provisions have been met or not. It is the terms are as per the provisions of the Companies Act or not. So those have to be clearly disclosed in this disclosure forms which are prescribed. That's one thing. Then the notices related, EGM, AGM related notices. Then the the disclosure, communication, and compliance with the Companies Act and the other regulatory norms. They are all coming under corporate governance. Basically, corporate governance is related to your transparent way of functioning, and trying to protect the interest of the stakeholders. So for this, what all disclosure, financial, non-financial disclosure, communication to the stakeholders, complying with the terms and conditions provisions of the Act, whether this has been adhered or not. So there are certain formats prescribed, and it is basically the responsibility of the company secretary. He has to make sure that they have been complied with. This basic responsibility comes on the company secretary.
Thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful session. Now, I want to express our sincere thanks and gratitude to Venugopal, sir, for sparing his valuable time to address the participants of this program and for his words of wisdom, which will give a long way in understanding the nuisance of the insurance law and attempting the examination. Friends, the next session in the series is scheduled on 4th May 2021 on banking law and practice. So do log in and send your queries in advance. I thank one and all present here. And once again, Venugopal sir, thank you very much for this wonderful session.
Thank you, Sarika. Thank you, Dr. Akinchan. Thanks for
Sir,
giving this
thank you, sir.
opportunity. It has been wonderful interacting with you all. I really enjoyed my session with you all and with your students. Thank you very much. I look forward to having another opportunity like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. Take care. Good luck to all of you.
Thank you.